The New Orleans Saints are picking at number 9, and when they are on the clock, who will they select as their first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft? My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we are going to be breaking down our first 3-round mock draft for the New Orleans Saints in this upcoming draft. But before I get into that, if you like the content that we put out and you want to help the Tracy Take channel grow, easiest way is smashing that subscribe button, tackling that bell to get notified when Saints videos come out. And while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you think of this mock and what you would rather see the Saints do if you disagree with one of our picks. With that being said, Ryan, let's pull it up here. So we did a full mock draft, the first 3 rounds. So you can see who they selected there in orange, some of the picks before and after them, some other potential options there on the right. We had them going with Nick Scourton here. And this is a player I like. I'm looking forward to seeing him more at the combine as well, comparing him up to some of these other guys. His teammate Shamar Stewart had a really solid senior day, senior bowl, senior combine week because he dropped out of the Senior Bowl because he played so well. So
Yeah.
I could also potentially see like maybe they really like him as well because the Saints historically, even if you go look at Cam Jordan, really like the bigger edge rushers, a guy that maybe could
Yeah.
even move around the defensive line. And I think a guy like Nick Scourton, who can maybe even add on a couple of pounds as well, who's already sitting at what, 6'4", 285,
Yeah. Around
if I'm
there.
not mistaken. Feel like that would be a good fit as there. And more to the general mold historical theme that they've had. Now they do have a new head coach coming in. By all reports, it is seem like it's going to be Kellen Moore. So it's going to be interesting. Just what philosophical changes there might be depending on what new head coach comes in.
Yeah, and that's eh, take everything in this mock draft with a grain of salt. One, because it's a mock draft. Like, this is just an exercise that we like to do to see kind of where players might fall and see if fits make sense and whatnot. But also, like, for teams like the Saints who do not have a head coach in place, it's going to be that's going to change a lot when the draft actually comes around. But for me, kind of getting back into this pick, Nick Scourton is a really good football player at a really young age. And I think you're kind of enamored with the ceiling with him because as a 19-year-old, he was I think he was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year or like a first team All Big Ten edge rusher last year when he was at Purdue.
Yeah.
And then he comes over to Texas A&M in a totally different role where he was kind of an outside linebacker at Purdue. Now he's like a hand in the dirt edge rusher, kind of playing in like over a tackle almost. And it looks like his production took a dip and it looks like he had a down year. But I have to say, I was just really impressed with his discipline and power and his anchor in the run game as well. Like, he just did a really good job of playing edge rusher. And at sometimes it felt to me like he was a little too conservative with how he was playing. And I kind of feel like that maybe falls on coaching where they're trying to keep these quarterbacks in the pocket. I think you go look at like I believe they played Alabama, South Carolina, like really athletic quarterbacks. And so he was just trying to play contain and keep guys in the pocket at that point instead of really getting aggressive and getting upfield like he was at Purdue. And I think that kind of hurt his production. And then I think you go look at the LSU game specifically when he's going up against Emory Jones and Will Campbell, and he just had a really solid game with generating multiple pressures. I believe he got a sack as well. And so just a really solid edge rusher with a lot of really good traits that I think can grow and develop in New Orleans here. He's my edge, like tied for 2. Him and James Pierce Jr. are really close for me, but for very different reasons. A couple other options I think that they could go with: Tyler Warren, the tight end from Indiana. I think it's Jawan Johnson.
Sorry. Tyler Warren, tight end for Penn State. He got drafted by Indianapolis.
Yeah, tight end.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
He I believe it's Jawan Johnson, their tight end, is a free agent, and
Yeah.
the Saints are in cap hell and for perpetuity, I guess, at this point. And another option, if they want to stick with edge rushers, Mike Green would be good there. Luther Burden, I think, would be an interesting option there. I think he would be a really good complement to Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and some of the other weapons that they have down there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we just did the Panthers mock draft as well. And like the philosophy was pretty simple. It's like defense, defense, defense. With the
Yeah.
Saints, and even too as well with obviously we talked about the head coaching vacancy still open. It's don't really know which route they could go. If Tet McMillan falls to them, do they want to get a Tet McMillan and like similar reason for why you go with Luther Burden be a compliment to Chris Olave, like your number one overall receiver. You want to maybe go offensive line and continue to keep bolstering up. Will Campbell is going to be a guy that is probably going to kick in the guard and is probably the best offensive lineman in this class.
Hmm.
Or sorry, or do you want to go edge rusher? In what type of edge rusher do you want to go after? Because there's a big difference between Mike Green, James Pierce Jr., and Nick
Eh,
Scourton. There are
yeah.
three totally different types of edge rushers. So which one's going to be the one that fits their fancy? That's what's going to be very fascinating for the Saints when they're picking here, and how well these guys end up testing as well over these next couple of weeks at the pro days and also at the combine as well. So, but here though, we had them go with Nick Scourton with their first pick. And let's move on now to the second round here, where we had them go with Elic. It's Elic
Elic Ayomanor.
Elic
Ayomanor.
Ayomanor. I just want to
Yeah.
call him Eric. I was gonna say
Yeah.
I was trying to say but Elic Ayomanor, very solid receiver out of Stanford. He's been a guy. There have been names that have risen and fallen and risen in many mock drafts. And I feel like this is just a guy who's just pretty consistently very early day two pick. He's a very solid receiver. I I I see a lot of Ted McMillan in him. However, he's just smaller. He's just like Ted McMillan, 6'5" and super lanky, while Alec Hourmanor is 6'2", if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And solid outside receiver, had a great career. And I even think too as well, there's good film on him against Travis Hunter, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to really
Yeah.
help out his stock. But it just seems like a very solid pick as well, and a great compliment to Chris Olave and what
Yeah.
he can help bring to the Saints offense.
Yeah, and that to me, I think is the big thing is you go look at his play against higher competition, specifically that Colorado game last year is what really put him on the map, and he was kind of coming off a knee injury, significant knee injury from 2 seasons ago, before that game, and it that was his coming out party. I think really as a prospect, he decided to come back to Stanford, and was really the only sense of offense that they had, and
Yeah,
man, he is just fun to watch in the sense of he makes every type of catch, one-handed catches, contested catches. He beats guys off routes. His big thing is just he doesn't have a lot of production, and I could really see a team falling in love with him and taking him maybe a little bit higher there. But he does him and Jack Besh, I think, are similarly built to me in this class. I think they can be moved around the formation in a similar way, and they're probably similar level of athletes as well. Jack Best just has better college production than Elic Manor, and maybe Elic Manor has a few less injury concerns because Jack Best has the knee thing going on, where he had a bad knee injury and then kind of aggravated it again there at the end of the season. So interesting prospect here, but I think he can be that true X wide receiver that allows Chris Olave to move all around the formation. So
yeah,
a few other options. Let's say they take a wide receiver, Luther Burden, or they go a different route with their ninth pick. I think Shamar Stewart at this point would be a really good value. He went to Seattle at 50, but he's a really athletic edge rusher. They are actually the teammate of Nick Scourton, their first overall pick at number 9. But I think that would be a good fit there. Jalen Royals, kind of a similar to Luther Burden in that slot role, another good complement there as well. And then if they want to kind of increase some of that linebacker play, I think Jahad Campbell would be an interesting fit. I believe Demario Davis is getting older, and Jahad Campbell would be a good kind of heir to the throne there at linebacker.
yeah, yeah. And so very similar as well to kind of the logic behind the first round pick. Is there so many different routes that I think that they
Yeah,
can end up going here, because I just think the Saints team just needs to improve.
yeah,
And I think with what they're at, with their cap space situation, going to be very curious if this is going to be the year where they're like, all right, like let's just like blow it up and then let's try and draft really young talent, or try and kick the can again down the road. So that's what's going to be very interesting. So they do have 2 picks in the third round thanks to the Marshawn Lattimore trade here. So we'll get to that one in a second. This is their original pick here, but they draft Marcus Mbow out of Purdue, offensive tackle. They had a solid Senior Bowl. And I think once again, just another solid option, just solid pick, just kind of bolster up that offensive line here. And Ryan, this is a guy too as well. We've already talked about a former Purdue player. Now we're talking about, well, I guess he's also a former Purdue player now as well. You get
Yeah.
my point though. But
Yeah.
what do you like about Marcus Bow here going to the Saints?
So he's a little light. I think right now he's only about 305 pounds, I think, coming out of the Senior Bowl, but he's a really good athlete. He's a former basketball player. He's only been playing football for, I believe, 6 years. And so just you can kind of see that in his game. He's a little raw technically, but I think if you work on his hands, his feet are always moving, which is something that you really want to see from an offensive lineman. He plays right tackle, although I think he measured in a little under 33 inches, so he will probably kick into guard and just be a really athletic guard for you. But at this point, I always say I like my first round picks to be like day one contributors. My second round picks will be day one contributors within the first half of the season. And then my day three or my third round picks are going to be guys that hopefully by the end of the year are ready to contribute. And I think Marcus Bow, if you let him kind of sit and develop just for 10 to 12 games, like after like all of training camp and everything, I think he would be a really solid guard for you to come in and just give you some really solid guard play, especially too with an offense that's going to be so run dominant with a or run dominant slash like uh get the running back out on screen plays, get him the ball out in the flat. It's really nice to have athletic offensive linemen like Marcus Bow to kind of lead the way there, especially since Alvin Kamara is kind of, I don't say your number one receiver, but he's your number one playmaker. This offense has kind of run through Alvin Kamara. So I
Yeah.
think getting an athletic offensive lineman here in Marcus Bow would be really good. He needs some development, but all the tools are there for him to be a successful NFL
Yeah.
player.
Yeah. I like his overall athleticism, like what you were talking about there. I do think there's going to be a position here where if you'd want to address the secondary, I think this would be a good spot here as well because they did trade off Marshawn Lattimore, and that's what this next pick is going to be. We'll get that in a second. But Paulson Adebo, he's also free agent and has a pretty devastating leg injury as well
Yeah.
that he's going to be recovering from. But even then, too, like Zaya Alexander in our mock draft, he went to San Francisco just a couple picks later. You had Lathan Ransom as well, safety go a couple picks after that at pick number 82. So if you wanted to address the secondary, I think that's going to be something that you'd want to address here because I do really like this next pick that the Saints make. Harold Fannin Jr., tight end. Everybody's been talking about him. And I think he'd be a really good complement here, I think, to this offense as well, trying to add some more playmakers. And especially also, too, if the rumors are true that Kellen Moore is going to be the head coach for the Saints, I think with an offensive minded guy like him, you get Harold Fannin here at number 93. I think he was the most offensive, most productive tight end in college.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
my
he
sense.
was.
Oh, okay, perfect. And so, some questions on his blocking capabilities, but kind of going on to your point though about Marcus Bow with his overall athleticism and with the offense already kind of running through Alvin Kamara and his versatility. If you go get a versatile well, I guess it's not really versatile because it sounds like he struggles to block just because of his size. But with how great of a receiver he is as well, it's going to open things up. I think even more in that offense, give maybe even more opportunities to Alvin Kamara because if Harold Fannin Jr. can show that like he can burn defenses, then it's be like, well, shoot, we got to put a guy on this, and that's one less guy we can put on Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, and that is, I do think for his weight, I think he's a decent blocker. He just gets pushed around by bigger edge rushers at times.
Yeah,
And he's definitely willing to block. It's just like he's 240 pounds on a good day. And so I think that's going to be tough for him at the next level. And I think we see guys like this fall in the draft. The example that I think of is the Panthers division rival of the Saints is they got Jatavian Sanders at the top of the fourth last year. When in reality, like I feel like he should have gone in the second or third round at worst. And they got him at the top of the fourth just because he came in at 6'4", 242, I think, at the combine. Wasn't
yeah,
much of a blocker. And I mean, they got a really solid receiving tight end there at the end of at the beginning of the fourth. And I think that's gonna be what happens here for the Saints is he's gonna be a really solid receiving tight end. He has a frame to kind of put on a little bit more weight. But I do think that he's going to be a really good receiving tight end at the NFL level.
yeah. And the Falcons would take him with their first round pick, and so
Yeah,
uh, and it would work out splendidly for both parties involved. But no,
yeah,
so yeah, just to kind of wrap up this mock here, but it's I think for the Saints, almost every pick, you can almost make an argument just going to be best player available. I think with some of the needs that they have. So I think running back. I mean, this is a deep running back class, but that being said, I think Kendrick Miller did a solid job as well. Um, like when Alvin Kamara was hurt, but Alvin Kamara is still the guy there. It's going to be he's 28, 29, I think, and he's
Yeah.
still number one guy. The key is going to be getting more weapons for Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, whoever the quarterback is going to be. And that's another maybe sneaky option here as well that they can maybe get in the end of day two. Maybe towards the end of round three is like, where is Quinn Ewers going to fall? Where is Jackson Dart going to be? Where is
Dylan Gabriel,
Dylan
Jalen
Gabriel, Will
Milrow
Powell?
at this point after that Senior Bowl. Although he might fall to like day 3 consideration after the Senior Bowl. But
I would look for Quinn Ewers or
yeah,
Jackson Dart. It seems like over them, but just even in general though, it's just trying to get some more weapons for them. But at the same time though, too, there's a lot of needs on the defensive side of the ball, particularly I think the defensive line.
yeah.
Just need to get younger. Just need to get uh, more active players. I think that defensive line and the secondary,
Mhm.
I believe, is an area that needs to be addressed. So, but we'll have to see. So many different avenues the Saints can go. So it's going to be a fascinating draft.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. The Senior Bowl's over, so now it really feels like the offseason is starting. These prospects are really starting to affect their draft stock and make names for themselves. But let's
Yep.
go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this New Orleans Saints 3-round mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.